before his assassination. JFK had been warning about a system operating from the shadows.
And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
And when you ask about transhumanism, and as I write in the book, it all began in this very interesting moment decades ago. This is actually not new. It was when the Berlin Wall came down. Many Soviet bioweapons engineers defected to the United States, and DARPA hired them. A quote from a DARPA director at the time was, "We had no biologists in the Pentagon." They were busy having those people like the Jason scientists, supermen of scientists, men dealing with machines, engineers, physicists looking at these big space systems. But suddenly, the idea that biology is important became what was called a thrust at DARPA. And there began this movement to look inside the body, to work with what they call the dismounted soldier, the guy that's walking on the ground. And this led to a whole new umbrella of programs, which is called augmented cognition, which is called, in short, the super soldier program. And it's how to make warfighters smarter than other warfighters, stronger than other warfighters. And again, these, are double-edged swords.
And chemtrails, by the way, barium salts are in chemtrails. They are 10,000 times more toxic to your nervous system than lead. They contain mycobacteria, viruses, Pseudomonas florensis bacteria, human plasma. Wonder what human plasma is doing in chemtrails. And this is not by conjecture. I did a lot of research before I'd ever say this. But these chemtrails are nasty. And there's 3 reasons for chemtrails. The first is and I talked to my NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it. Okay? Because I'm a whistleblower. On the inside, it's not open for discussion. And my NSA buddies told me, 95% of them told me they were up there trying to spray to reflect the sun out to stop global warming. So most of them are dumb enough to believe that garbage. Okay? And also in the chemtrails, and there's a link directly that Jeff Francis found out, and I'm going to have Dr. Staninger and Dr. Carjou on in about a week on my radio show. And I've done some investigations, and there's very solid evidence now that Morgellons is caused by a silicon-based nanomachine life form that does not originate on planet Earth. Is that not interesting? This is a silicon-based life form that is intelligent like bees or ants, and it fights back. Conversion of the atmosphere into a plasma for weather modification, geotectonic warfare, scalar mind control technologies, the woodpecker, which has been discovered back in the 70s, HARP, the Tetra system in the United Kingdom, Gwen towers in the United States, and the Iridium satellite system connected to the cell towers and the smart highways is all based on not only sending out a signal to track you, but they can also, besides the cell signal, they can actually have a biocoded signal to your DNA to affect your physiology and insert thoughts into your mind. And they have this technology today.
After the Vietnam War, an interesting thing happened. There's this perception that there was it wasn't a perception, it was a reality that there was a downsizing of the military per se, which there was. DARPA got in big trouble for doing what was called pre-requirement research, for creating weapon systems that were ahead of the time when in fact we needed to be, fighting this war in Vietnam that we lost. And so DARPA was punished. It got kicked out of the Pentagon, that sort of coveted place to be, and sent several miles away, where it is now in Arlington, Virginia. They had a couple moves. But so DARPA kind of got its wrist slapped, and there was a moment with many of the people who were there at the time talking about how, they thought maybe the agency would be folded, but that's not what happened. In fact, the opposite happened, which is that suddenly DARPA got an influx of money thanks to the Secretary of Defense, Harold Brown, who was the first scientist in the Pentagon to be Secretary of Defense. Brown had been in charge of all the DARPA technology during the Vietnam War, specifically the sensor technology. And Brown created an entire industry behind this idea of information technology, behind the idea of nanotechnology, which is the art of making things small, that all of these sensor systems could be shrunken down. And so even though the public perception was that DARPA was in trouble, DARPA had created Agent Orange during the war. So there was a real idea of banishment, and yet, in fact, the agency flourished. And it didn't really become evident until the Gulf War.
With the evolution of the influence of DARPA and who is influencing DARPA, is this an agency that the American public can trust? On one hand, we've gotten this narrative from DARPA again and again about what it has essentially given the world. Mm-hmm. Again, the example of the internet or GPS to make sure that we're not getting lost on our way to tonight's talk. Is with those beneficial those benefits aside, is this an agency you feel like that we can trust?
Mm-hmm. You know, the journalist's job is to inform the public, so I try to tell the story straight down and let people conclude. But I'm also mindful of the fact that Eisenhower warned the public against the military-industrial complex and also said that the way to balance that out was the alert and knowledgeable citizenry. And that's why I think it's important, your question which asks about influence. As a whole, I found that all of these scientists that work for DARPA are really amazing scientists working super hard on pushing technology and science in a way, and grateful that DARPA is there to fund them. But the brain programs are very different, because my understanding from interviewing DARPA scientists, the brain programs are presented by DARPA, and many of them are very classified. They're in the clinical trial stage. It's this idea of implanting neural prosthetics into the brain of brain-wounded warriors, so guys who come back from Iraq and Afghanistan with brain injuries, who have cognitive impairment. And this idea that these neural implants will help restore their brain functions. And so that is a noble idea, and DARPA has teamed up with the White House on the Brain Initiative to do this. But what many scientists said to me is there is also something else going on, which is DARPA mapping the brain, and DARPA using this information from the electrodes in the brain to learn about how the neural networks work, so that, and this is the idea, that long coveted barrier to break artificial intelligence can happen, because DARPA has been at the forefront of artificial intelligence since its inception, and no one has been able to figure out how to make machines think. And the idea is that these brain chip programs are actually will lead the way toward true artificial intelligence, which syncs right up in line with the idea of self-governance in autonomous weapons.
Our government is concealing the information they have pertaining to these silent weapons. And why is it that seemingly most government officials just avoid the brain control tech discussion entirely?
No, because they know exactly what's happening. They have been working on these kinds of technologies to be able to do this. I mean, think about if you could make someone feel crazy, right, and disturb them, and throw them off balance. You could do this to political opponents. You could do this to entire people, voting blocks. So this is not out of the realm of these very nefarious people, like in the CIA and these other types of secret societies and institutions of our government. We're now finding out the use of AI can be used against people. We've already heard from the World Economic Forum that they have the ability with AI to be able to read people's thoughts by putting in a little Bluetooth in someone's ear, that they can actually see what someone is actually thinking about as they're working. And they're going to sell it to us, Allison, as this is going to be good for employment, because employers will know whether or not their employees are daydreaming or thinking about other things other than the job. But what is it saying? It is saying that they now possess the ability to read our thoughts and now weaponize us with acoustical types of things that can be sent to us that throws us off balance or makes us feel crazy. This is all, where is it going? All about controlling the narrative, controlling people.
Absolutely. That is most certainly what it is all about, as has been made rather clear over the past couple of years especially. But yeah, I think this could obviously take an extremely dangerous turn here. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this led to targeting and testing and even like torturing of innocent civilians, which brings me to my next thought, which is the inevitable threat of artificial intelligence mixing into all this, right? Mix AI into the use of neuroweaponry and you get an entirely new uncharted territory.
And the whole idea is that we would have these biological sensors in our bodies, and then they could read our thoughts, know our emotions, know whether we're hungry or not, or anything like that. And so now it's a warfare of information. They will have everything on you. They will know we're coming and going. And so this kind of warfare, this kind of being able to target individuals. And think about this. There is no way to detect. There's no entry point. There's no exit point like a bullet would have. Yeah. They could just target somebody and they're saying, yeah, he went crazy. Yeah, I'm sorry. We and then turn a kill switch on somebody and, and them lose a thread. Now,